What is up, everybody? Welcome back to RC's Gateway to Comics. Today we are going to be taking a look at another comic book that is an introduction to a superhero universe. This universe is the Dojo Kun Comics universe. And the comic book of which I'm referring to is Siamese. Now, Siamese is a collection of the first 4 issues of, obviously, Siamese. And I believe, if I'm correct, these books were previously released, but they weren't released through crowdfunding. They were sold by Dojo Kun Comics, Brian Menard, and if I'm not mistaken, he was also working with several other people to sort of build a universe, but now he's working on his own as Dojo Kun Comics, and he is putting out these stories through crowdfunding. So we have Siamese, and this is the introduction to their universe. So the first story is pretty much giving you a sort of a glimpse into how they function as a team. So they are twin sisters, Zhao and Ya Yao. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Brian, if you're watching this, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But they are a superhero team who go by the name Siamese. They pretty much the only way to tell them apart is the color of their tails and their personalities. But they function as a team that people don't know that they're a team because they look so similar. And it's not until the end of the first issue that they are revealed to, in fact, be 2 and not just 1. So you also get an introduction to villains in the first book, and they are sort of like corporate bigwigs who have superpowers, and they try to fool people into thinking that they are just harmless criminals. Well, not really harmless because criminals are never harmless, but they're not criminals to be taken seriously because they're just doing like small crimes before getting into like corporate corruption and espionage and stuff like that. So it's an intriguing way to show that your villains are smart because they're going outside of the norm, and it also gives you a glimpse into how they work as a team. So you're seeing the heroes work together as a team, and you're also seeing the villains work together as a team. And throughout the rest of the books, you also build up other superheroes in the Dojo Kun Comics universe, like Breathtaker, the woman in purple right here, and also Brickhouse, who he started out as a guy at a casino who has anger issues and is eventually promoted to being a bouncer because he is obviously a very formidable opponent, let's just say. And you also get sort of more condensed introductions to characters like the Scarlet Archer and other members of a superhero team that have yet to be built upon. You also see, I'm saying, and also you see a lot, because there's a lot of stuff that you are introduced to in this collection of 4 stories, and it is a lot. It is definitely a lot. You are introduced to the brains behind the whole superhero operation, and he may have ulterior motives in mind, he may not. It all depends on what you're able to see in the future stories. But it's definitely a very comprehensive look into Brian Menard's superheroes, and it does for Siamese and Breathtaker, and Brick House. Those are the three characters that are built the most upon, and the ones that I enjoy the most. But the other ones, they do need some more stories to build them up. And in the third and fourth stories in this, the villains that are introduced in the first book sort of seem like they're sidelined a little bit because the superhero team is being built up more, and also Siamese has an interaction with a mad scientist who causes some issues for them, and it does sort of put the corporate espionage villains on like the back burner for now, because they're not interacting with the main heroes at that time. Now, it is still an enjoyable story, but it may have been a little bit too much of trying to. It may have contained too much stuff trying to be built up at one time. I was still able to pick out characters that I want to see more of, and I'm not going to hold that against an introduction book, because it is, from what I can tell, a pretty expansive universe, and I was able to understand better the interactions between Siamese and Brick House and Breathtaker, because those are the four main ones that were introduced. Their story I do want to see more of, and it was certainly intriguing to dive into that story. Now, where I am going to fault this book a little bit, and this is just because of my personal opinion, it does have to do with art. And whenever you take a look at this book, the first two books, that sounded so weird. The first two stories were written by Brian Menard, Dojo Kun Comics, and it was drawn by one artist, Mike Salter, and colored by Ronson Edgelin. And whenever you see this art, it does look very amateur, and it looks like what you would expect from an indie comic. I really don't. It's not my type. It's very stiff and very shadowy, very scratchy, and it honestly, the only word that's coming to mind is amateur. It looks amateur. And whenever I was first reading this book, I was thinking to myself, if all of this book is going to be like this art style, I'm not going to continue reading it. And you can see that sort of in like the first page. It's very scratchy, the characters are blocky and stiff, and that it doesn't necessarily get better when it comes to like the fight scenes. So even with these ones, yes, there is action lines, but the characters there's not really motion to them. It looks like they're unnaturally posed there. And I need to again keep saying art is subjective. This is just not my cup of tea. Thankfully, when it comes to the third book, that is when the art style picks up a lot. And that is because the art was switched out for the artist Zilson Costa and the colorist Kevin Watson. And immediately, you can see a difference. The characters are much more smooth. There's motion to them. It's not as scratchy. There's a confidence to this art style that sticks out to me rather than the art style of the first two books. So once I got to these pages, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick around for this because this is more of what I like. And seeing like well put together action and seeing the characters actually seem like characters on the page and not like scratchy little mannequins that are posed in certain areas. It was definitely a breath of fresh air once I got halfway through the book. And I believe Dojo Kun is continuing to work with Zilson Costa, and I definitely recommend him that he keep doing that because I like his art style, and it definitely fits the superhero universe that Brian is trying to build much better than the art style of the previous two books. Again, and I keep saying this, but I'm going to say it again, art style is subjective. What appeals to me may not appeal to you, but this is my thoughts on it. Now, there's just one other thing that I do want to bring up, and that is some of the dialogue. There's about 90% of the time I say the dialogue works perfectly fine. The characters do interact with each other perfectly well, but there are times whenever I think that some of the jokes and innuendos may be a little bit too much. Like there is a way to write characters who are, I guess, sexual in nature, but having them constantly spout innuendos and um, talk about stuff like that, it seems very unnatural for a character. And the two main characters of Siamese do seem to do that a lot, and it does stick out in all the wrong ways. So I would, if there was a way to maybe minimize that and build them up as characters rather than like building them up as like sexual beings, then I feel like I would enjoy their characters more. But that's all up to um, Brian and how he's deciding to write the characters. There may be a payoff for it later on down the line, but I'm just letting you know what stuck out to me in this story. Other than that, I do like the characters, I do like their designs, and I do want to see more of them. I am hoping that there will be a Siamese 2. I know that I know that Brian has put out several campaigns, one of which is the Projectile Reptile campaign, and that is I And that is, I want to say, currently funding on Fund My Comic at the time of this recording. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But I am a backer of that. I do hope that the Dojo Kun universe will continue to be built upon, and I'm looking forward to seeing more intriguing characters. So, my final review of Siamese will have to be a PB&J level for this story. It is perfectly all right. The shifting art style, the first one, the first artist was not really my cup of tea, as I've said, but um, the second part of the book with Zilson Costa definitely elevated it more than the first two. The characters are very good. I do want to see more of them with those changes that I had mentioned. Um, Hopefully, the rest of these stories will be able to build upon these existing characters and develop them more rather than trying to introduce a lot of things in a short period of time. But we shall have to see. Um, and hopefully also the dialogue will maybe temper itself down a tiny bit whenever it comes to the innuendos, because sometimes it was a bit iffy. So yeah, this is a PB&J level book. I would say it functions perfectly fine as a comic, as an introduction, but it does need some changes. Some that need to stay, and some things need to stay, and some things need to be switched out. That's the best way that I can put it. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like down below. Comment what your thoughts are on Siamese. Have you seen any other of Dojo Kun's comics? If you have, let me know in the comments down below as well. And if you would also, please subscribe to the channel so we can continue to bring more eyes to independent comics, crowdfunded comics, creator-owned comics, anything that you would want to see. All of this stuff really needs to have more eyes see it. So the more people that we have watching these reviews, the more that they're going to see it. Thank you guys all for watching, and I will see all of you in the next video. Peace out.